Welcome back to the channel with Mr. Chen. Of course, today we will be looking at an interesting topic, the crop investigation and cost analysis, which is a school-based assessment, SBA, which is done in agricultural science. The SBAs, they are in two categories. You have those that are written up and you have those that are non-written. Alright, so the written up SBAs, of course, you have the investigation and cost analysis. So the grade 10 and 11 students are the CXC students in agricultural science. They are required to do 2 investigations and 2 cost analysis. 1 from crop and 1 from animal. Alright, so today I will be showing you a sample of a Coclusion investigation and cost analysis that was done, and of course I will also explain all the little nitty-gritties that you need to know in preparing your SBA. What you see on the screen is the cover page of an SBA that I have. What you're looking at is a crop investigation and cost analysis. The crop that the investigation and cost analysis is done on is Coclusion. So of course the title for this SBA is Coclusion investigation and cost analysis. Alright, so here what we have is a sheet, and this is the cover sheet, and of course the cover sheet should also have other information on it. So required by CXC, on your cover sheet you should also have the name of the students. So this particular sample, the SBA was done in group, so up to 5 or 4 students per group. So here you have the students, the student's registration number, the name of the school, the title of the project, the start date, and the termination date. So all of this should be on the cover sheet of your SBA, and it is required by CXC that it is done. So the spacing, it should be double spacing. So your SBAs, the sentences should be double spacing. For this heading, we don't use any specific, there's no specific requirement for the font size, so we use 48 right here. However, for the regular information, there's a specific requirement for the font size and the font. So the font should be Times New Roman, and the font size is 12, so remember that. So for the regular information, the font size is 12. For subheadings, you can use 14. Alright, so that is it for your cover sheet. Also remember now that the investigation and cost analysis, both of them have 2 different mark schemes and guidelines. So it's really 2 different SBAs. So the investigation is different from the cost analysis. But what you find out happen is that when you do the investigation, you will need budgets. So what we do is normally do the cost analysis from the same investigation. Alright, but there are 2 different guidelines that are used to do the investigation and the cost analysis. So this SBA, we have both of them. We'll talk about both of them, the investigation and the cost analysis. Also, remember, very important, that when you're writing up your investigation and your cost analysis, there should be no use of personal pronouns in your investigation or cost analysis. Alright, so let me open another window. This is the mark scheme for the investigation. So in this column here, we have the items, the second column, the descriptor, and of course, the third column is the score. The first item here is the introduction, and the total marks for the introduction is 2 marks. Within the introduction, there are subheadings. So we have name of student, student registration number, name of school, title of project, start date, termination date, table of content. All those subheadings, they do not attract any scores. Alright. The problem statement, clearly written, attracts 1 mark. The aim, clearly stated, attracts 1 mark also. So the introduction here, the total marks for the introduction is 2 marks. There are other items such as the methodology, the result, the discussion, the limitation, the recommendation, the conclusion, the presentation, the reference. All those attract marks, and the total mark would be 20, and when that is divided by 2 you'll get 10. However, to explain these marks on items in regards to the SBA, we will basically go back and forth. We'll do it item by item. So we're going to do the introduction now. So we're going to go over back to the SBA, explain the problem statement and aim, and then come back and view the methodology, etc. The introduction. I recommend that the introduction is done on a separate page, and for all the main headings I would recommend that you do them on individual pages. Alright, so you make it bold enough. There is no recommended font size. However, if you use a font size for 48, then you would continue to use the 48, alright, throughout the SBA. Now the supplementary information you would add on a separate page. So here we have the problem statement. Callaloo is normally grown on a clay loam soil at the school farm for several years. The school recently acquired a greenhouse. Productivity of callaloo produced in a greenhouse using the hydroponic system versus an outdoor setting using the same hydroponic system is unknown. Callaloo grown in greenhouse versus those grown outdoor, which will be more productive? Alright, so here it is saying that this experiment, there's a problem, there's an unknown situation. The investigation basically then would try to find out the productivity, which one would be more productive. If the callaloo grown in the greenhouse would be more productive than the callaloo grown outdoor. And of course, an hydroponic system will be used for both of them, which is a self-wicking system. When you're writing your problem statements, ensure that you establish that there's a need for an investigation. You're actually solving a problem or making a situation better. Alright, so that's how you try to write your problem statement. The aim: to conduct an investigation to observe the productivity level of callaloo grown outdoor using an hydroponic system versus callaloo grown in a greenhouse using the same method of hydroponic system. So your aim is written from your problem statement, and it's just an overall guide to what we will be doing in the SBA. Let us move to the next item. Alright, the next main item is the methodology, and of course, as I said, you'll put this on a separate sheet or page. Alright, so let us go back to the mark scheme to see the other items underneath the methodology and the score that is assigned. So the methodology of the SBA values 6 marks. Alright, so it values 6 marks. So the descriptor or the subheadings under the methodology are the experimental design, and that values 1 mark. List of materials and equipment used, 1 mark. For the activities, it has a maximum of 2 marks. Now, if the students have 5 or more activities described, they will earn 2 marks. If they have 1 to 4 activities described, then they will earn 1 mark. If no activities are described, then that's 0 mark. Also, the other descriptor or subheading is that the student should have 3 or more photographs showing students engaged in this investigation. That's 1 mark. So there should be pictures of them carrying out the activities. So 3 or more would attract 1 mark. If the student have less than 3, that's 0 mark. So you should not have point in your grading system. So it's 1. If it's not 1, then it's 0. And data collection here, that values 1 mark, and data collection here means the type of data that you will collect and how you would collect them. Alright, so you state the data or information that you're going to collect from the investigation. So under this section, it's not speaking about the information that you would already collected. It is a future tense. So this data collection here is written in the future, what you will do, what you will collect. Alright. So let's go over back to the project and explain the different items of the methodology. So here we are at the methodology page, and as I recommend is that each main heading should be on individual pages. So let's go down to the items that are found under the methodology. So of course here we'll see the experimental design. Under this section you will give all the detail of how you will set up the experiment. So you will provide all that detailed information. For example, let's go down and read what we have. So number 1 here, to plant 12 callaloo in the greenhouse. 2 5-gallon buckets will be used per plant. Open bracket, the planting distance for each crop is 1 foot apart. The water supply system will be the wicking system. So what that is saying is that 12 callaloo plants will be planted in the greenhouse. To make the wicking system, which is the still water hydroponic system, 2 buckets will use to create 1 wicking system. So 1 plant will be planted in those 2 5-gallon buckets. And of course, the water would be in the bottom of the bucket. You would make your statement here in your experimental design. Alright, so number 2 here, 12 plants will also be planted outdoor in 5-gallon buckets. The planting distance will be 1 foot apart. The water supply system will be the wicking system. So what you also see here is that 12 plants will also be planted outdoor in the same wicking buckets. So the only difference is that some of the plants are planted in the greenhouse while some will be planted outdoor. The planting distance remains the same, as well as the wicking bucket system remains the same. Number 3, to use chicken manure and 20-20-20 NPK as fertilizer mixed into the water delivery system. Alright, so here again you outline the fertilizer that you'll use, and you also outline that fertilizer will be placed in the wicking buckets. Alright, number 4, baking soda will be used to neutralize the acidity of the water periodically. Alright, so you also stated that you will add baking soda to neutralize the irrigation water in the buckets, because what will happen if you continue to add fertilizer in the water, it will get acidic. So every now and then you would have to try to neutralize back that water, and what will be used is your baking soda to do that. So 5 and 6 is telling you how you would collect the information and what type of information you will collect. So the importance here of the experimental design is that it tells you how your experiment would be set up. So let's go down. So of course, your experimental design, you should supplement it with also the diagrams, all the necessary diagrams, drawings of how you would set up your experiments. So you would provide all that information that is required to show how your experimental year would look. So of course, your drawings should be labeled. Of course, you should have headings of your diagrams. The main heading here is the design of the hydroponic system is illustrated below. And then your drawing here have an individual title. So this is your statement above. And then you have the title of your diagram, and your diagram should be labeled. So this is showing you that drawing showing the wicking system. So of course, so this is the hydroponic system, which is called the wicking system. So 2 buckets are placed in each other here, and the water will be collected down here. The plants will be up here, and for each bucket you will put 1 plant in each bucket. So of course, when you make your design, you should also give a description of your design. You're going to explain what it is. So you will tell what the design is all about. So you will give all the specifications required. As it says here, 2 5-gallon buckets were placed into each other. A hole will be made in the top bucket such that a small bottle can be placed in it as a storage and delivery system for the fertilizer. A piece of white pipe will be cut into small pieces and will be used as easy access for irrigation water delivery to the system. A part of the bucket cover will be used to cover the size of the pipe to facilitate it so that the water will reach the fertilizer. Okay, so as I said, you would give a description of all that is required. So again, back to the experimental design. As we said, it values 1 mark. However, it requires a lot of information. Alright, so let's go down to the other component of the methodology. Alright, the other component of the methodology is the data collection. So here you will state all the information that you would collect for your result. So on the data collection heading here, you're just going to write out all the information that you will collect. So one here, we said 2 cuttings of the callaloo will be made and the yield collected at each harvest. All the information that you state in your data collection, that's the guide that the assessor will use to see what you will have in your result. So the assessor will check your data collection and then go and look in your result to look for these information that are stated. Alright, so number 2, to collect the yields by measuring the weights of the two cuttings. So in your results now, you should show the amount of callaloo that were harvested in the two cuttings. Alright, so your data collection is just telling you what information will be collected. And this information would be also followed by the assessor to see if you have that in your result. If you don't state it in your data collection, you should not show it in your result. However, if you make observations that you don't state in your data collection, you can add it in your discussion, but don't add it in the result. Alright, we are still at the methodology. Of course, we are at the material and equipment used. So how you would do this part, you would basically list all the materials and equipment used and you describe them. Alright, so for example, number one, hand shovel. Alright, so the hand shovel is used to create a hole for planting seedling and also for applying ammonium sulfate to the soil. So of course, you have the fan rake here, the machete, the water can, the knife, the hoe, the shovel, the cord line, the bucket, the pipe, the greenhouse, the white lime, the bamboo, the tape measure, the bottle, the ground fork. So all the items, all the materials, all the equipment you will use in your investigation, you would list them here and you would give a description of them. Again, that attracts 1 mark. Alright, so the other item underneath methodology is your activities. Alright, so of course, if you remember, it says if you have 5 or more activities described, then you will get the full mark, which is 2. Alright, so here you should have your heading here, activities. And I recommend that you do your activities, you will do it on a weekly basis. So here you have, say, week 1. So for this particular, based on how your school is set up, you can group it under a week. You might have your classes 2 times per week. So of course, you try to do it on a weekly basis. Alright, on a daily basis, it depends on you really. But of course, so the activity here, of course, you should state what your activity is. So here we said week 1, preparation of buckets outdoor. Alright, so you would also give your description. So the area that the buckets will be placed on, the land was leveled and the buckets were placed 1 foot apart from each other. Alright, and that should be backed up with your picture. So you will need 5 of those. So in this particular SBA, we have 1 activity there, 2 activities here. So week 2, preparation of bucket for indoor. The buckets were taken into the classroom where the students pierced holes in the bucket with solder gun. A portion of the buckets were cut out to accommodate the wide pipe that will be placed in it. So here you should back that up with your pictures as well of you. This is evidence that you're actually doing the investigation. So the assessor again will look at the picture to make sure that the students here are on the SBA. So it's very important. So you should have 5 or more of those to attract your full marks. So for each activity, it is recommended that students take their pictures. So if it's a group, the 5 students should be taking their pictures of the 5 activities. Alright, all of them should participate in the activities. Alright, so week 3 here states the 3rd activity, gathering of manure. Compost rabbit manure was collected and used for a nutrient source. Preparation of soil. The soil was collected and placed in a small corner and the soil medium used was 1 manure. It should be 1 part manure to 1 part loam to half part sand. So here is a 1 to 1 to half. Baking soda was added to the soil to neutralize the medium. The buckets were filled with soil medium while the buckets were arranged on the area prepared. Water the soil medium, transplanting of the seedlings to the container. Alright, so all that were done in week 3. So that's 3 activities and 3 pictures, right? Alright, here again we have number 4, which is the 4th activity, planting of the seedlings. A few of the seedlings were planted in buckets and in the greenhouse, and the others were planted outdoor in the other buckets. Alright, so activity 4, which is under week 4, transplanting of seedlings. A few of the seedlings were planted in the buckets in the greenhouse and the others were transplanted outdoor in the other buckets. So the activities you do indoor is the same activities that were done outdoor. Okay, the only difference, remember, is that some of the plants were indoor while some were outdoor. Alright, so the fifth activity on week 5 was observation. The reservoir was checked and refilled for both indoor and outdoor. Alright, so you should have your pictures there. Alright, so week 6 here is showing you the 6th activity along backed up with pictures. And then you have week 7, week 8. So week 7 here, refilling of the reservoir. The reservoir of the container was filled back up with water mixed with white lime and fertilizer. Week 8, which is the 8th activity, observation of callaloo. There was a massive growth in the callaloo leaves in the greenhouse compared to the outdoor callaloo, which had less growth. The leaves had no diseases and there was not much sign of insect infestation in the greenhouse. Alright. The callaloo outdoor leaves had insect bites, some leaves turn yellow. Alright, so you should just state the activity here, don't need to get in detail. Alright, just state what was done and back that up with pictures. Week 9, application of fertilizer. Fertilizer was added to the plants in a circular motion to the plant in the greenhouse. A tablespoon of NPK was added to a gallon of water. Week number 9, which is the activity 9, application of fertilizer. Fertilizer was added to the plants in a circular motion to plants in the greenhouse and outdoor. A tablespoon of NPK was added to a gallon of water. Alright, so that's basically for the activities and the photographs. So remember that the mark scheme is that once the candidates have 5 or more activities described, that's 2 marks. If it is 1 to 4 and explain, it's 1 mark. No activities, 0 mark. For each activity, once you can get photographs for each activity, that would be better. I recommend that for each activity that you do, try to get photographs for that as proof. Alright, so the methodology section is completed. So let's go back to the mark scheme to see our next section or item and see the marks that are allocated. As you can see, the result here values a total of 4 marks. Alright, so all the subheading relating to the results are 1, collected relevant data, that values 1 mark. So as I said, the collected relevant data, it should be the statements you made in the data collection, and also those data that you will collect, that you state, they should match up with the aim of the SBA. Alright, so all the information that you would present in your result, it should be stated in your data collection. And the information you state in your data collection, it should be relevant to the aim, to the problem statement of your investigation. So this is where your actual information that you collected from your investigation started. So you would present that data. So you would collect the data, and that's 1 mark. So the assessor would check your SBA to see that the information that you said you would collect in your data is actually collected in your SBA. Alright, so the presentation of results, that values 1 mark. So the presentation here means how do you organize your information when you collect them. So you could organize them in a table, in a pie chart, in a graph, etc. And of course, the interpretation of the results, the maximum mark you can score from that is 2. So if you fully interpret your results, that's 2 marks. If you partially interpret them, that's 1. And if you don't, that's 0. So of course, under each of your presentations, say for example, you do it in a table, you should state what the information is saying. So you will not do any discussion there. You just state what the information is saying that you have. Or say you put it in a table, you're stating what the information is saying in the table, from the table. Alright, so let's go back over to the SBA and then we can do further explanation. As I said, the result, all the information that you have in your result would normally be stated in your data collection. So let's go back to the data collection to see what was there, and then we come back to the result. So here we said that the data collection, you should have 2 cuttings of the callaloo will be made and the yield collected at each harvest. Alright, so you should have that information of the 2 cuttings, the amount of callaloo you gathered from 2 cuttings. And number 2, to collect the yield by measuring the weights of the callaloo. So you should have the weights of the yields as well. So you're basically going to collect information from the 2 cuttings and the yield of those 2 cuttings of callaloo. So let's go back down to the result. So remember, all the information that is in your data collection is what you should have in your result, or the other way around. What you have in your result is what it should be matched up back with what you stated in your data collection. Very important. So let's go to what we have here. So the results of the yield of the callaloo in the study is presented in table 1 and figure 1 below. Alright, so table 1. Alright, so here in table 1 we see that in this column you have indoor and outdoor. In the second column we have the yield, pounds, first cutting. Alright, so you should have, and then over here this column, the third column, you have yield in pounds for second cutting. Alright, so based on what was stated, you said that there would be 2 cuttings. 2 cuttings from the indoor and 2 from the outdoor, and of course for each cutting you should have the yields, the weight of the yield. Alright, important correction to be noted here is that your units should be in kilograms. So you should also remember to use standard units whenever you're doing your SBAs or investigation. The information should be documented under in standard units. So in this case it should be kilogram. Alright, so the pounds should be converted to kilograms. So remember that, very important. Alright, so for this table, if you notice, the information is presented in a table, so that's good. This same information now is also presented in a graph. Alright, the same information that you have up here is also created in a bar graph down here. Alright, so in doing this information, you want accuracy and ease, you use your Microsoft Excel to do that. So once you create your table in Microsoft Excel, you can just go ahead and create your graph from that same information. Very easy. Another video will be made showing you how that is done. So just remember to subscribe to the channel so you can get those automatic updates. Alright, so to the interpretation, this is your interpretation. You just tell what is in the graph and the table. Alright, so as I said, let's read. So the table and graph above are showing both indoor and outdoor yield of callaloo harvested for both treatment. The harvest of the first and second yield has shown that the yield obtained for production under greenhouse condition can be greater than that obtained by callaloo grown outdoor. Alright, so you're interpreting what you have in the table and the graph. So you just state what the graph and the table is telling you. Alright, based on the comparison. So that's all. You will not give any reason out why the performance of the greenhouse callaloo was better than the outdoor. Okay, so remember that. When you start giving reason out, that's when you're going to do the discussion. Alright, so let's scroll down to see what the discussion is saying. So here we have the discussion is next. So let's go over to the mark scheme to see how the marks are allocated and then come back to the SBA. The discussion is saying here the total marks is 3. Over here is a breakdown of the scores for the discussion. So the first section says, if you fully discuss findings with reference to relevant supporting literature, then you will get a total of 3 marks. What that means is, if you get information from books to compare that with your result, you would basically attract the full mark. So it basically means you would make quotings from the internet or from textbooks, and from those quotings you would document your references. Now if you use references or quotings from internet or books or other articles to back up or to compare your information or your findings with, then you would attract the full marks. The second section says partially discuss findings with reference to relevant supporting literature, then you will attract 2 marks. And if you discuss findings with no supporting literature, you will get 1. So that is saying, if you just speak about or write about or discuss the findings you get from your experiment only, then you would only attract 1 mark. So the main difference is if you compare your information with other references from the internet or books, etc. Let's go over back to the SBA to see what we have. Okay, when you're doing your discussion, it should be discussed. from the aim. So you would basically refer back to your aim. So let's go back to see what our aim is saying, and then we get back to the discussion. Alright, so the aim says to conduct an investigation to observe the productivity level of callaloo grown outdoor using hydroponic system versus callaloo grown in greenhouse using the same method of hydroponic system. So when you're going to do your discussion, you're basically going to speak about the production of callaloo indoor versus the production of callaloo outdoor. So your discussion should be matching up with your aim. Alright, so let's get back to the discussed information. Now, also when you're doing your discussion, you're going to make relevance to the findings. All the results, the information from your results, you would also make relevance to that as it matched up with your aim. And also you will try to give reasons now. You try to provide reasons why you think you get those results. And also in your discussion, as was mentioned earlier, you would also try to have supporting information from other literature to back up your discussion or to compare your discussions with. Alright, so as we go through, I will point out some keynotes that you need to also know for your discussion. So let's read. The total production of the callaloo in the greenhouse, which was 33 pounds. So this is the other keynote that I said. When you're speaking about your results, you should use your numerals now and bracket them. Was better than the callaloos grown outside, a total of 5 pounds. So you put that in bracket. So here you use your numerals in your discussion. Alright. The callaloos grown in the greenhouse did not show any sign of pest and disease infestation or damages. Also, the callaloos indoor were huge and have grown rapidly. On the other hand, the callaloos grown outdoor got a lot of insect bites and damages, which affected the total production of the callaloo grown outdoor. So you're giving one reason here. You're discussing your findings from the investigation that was done, right? You did not start to make any comparison with the literature, any other literature as yet. So you're giving your reason why the callaloos grown outdoor had a smaller amount compared to those grown in the greenhouse, alright? Butterflies, caterpillars, and eggs were also seen on the callaloos grown outside. Alright, now so we're going to move to a quoting here in the second paragraph, and this is very important now. This is your supporting literature now. Of course, when you do a quoting, you should also do a reference, and also you should also know how to write your quotings and also your references. Let's read. According to Rodriguez, A 2018, although working in an outdoor garden allows you to soak in the sun, many prefer the controlled indoor environment greenhouse provide. You are still productive in the garden on a surprise rainy day, and plants tend to grow better in the greenhouse compared to outdoor. This line here is what is actually backing up what you were saying in this first paragraph up here. Alright, so that's your supporting literature. It is supporting what you're actually saying. With stressful pathogen and pests, the plants concentrate on healthy growth rather than repair and defense. So what Rodriguez is saying here is that when your crops are outdoor and are exposed to pests and diseases, the plants will spend a lot more energy to do repairing and defense. So that is why the greenhouse crops did better. So that's what it is saying. Now, let's get back to how you would actually do your quoting. Very important. This is actually a single author, and this quoting is taken from the internet. So now when you're starting your quoting with according to, then of course, so you should start with the last name of the author, then a comma, then the initial of the first name of the author, full stop, then the year the information was published. Now you put that in bracket and then comma, and then the actual information that you're quoting now, you open quotation. And here, when you finish the sentence, you should have the full stop and then the quotation. Alright, so your full stop, then your quotation down here. Alright, so this is a single author. Now, you do not have to start your quoting with according to. But in my demonstration here, I am using according to. I think it is simpler. But you could actually do a statement first. And when you do that, you would actually put a colon after you make your statement. And then you would open bracket, you would put the author's name in bracket along with the here. So for example, you'd have open bracket Rodriguez A 2018 close bracket. Before that, remember you'd have your colon. So I prefer to do it this way. So with this format, you'd say according to Rodriguez A 2018 and then you comma open the bracket. Alright, you don't need to use a colon there. Alright, so let's continue. So here in the second quoting, you should recognize that there's no author name here. So in this case, when you're doing quotings and references from articles that you don't have an author, then you look for the organization name. Alright, so if you can find the organization of the article, then you can go ahead and do your quoting. So this is how you would do it. So according to the Delaware State University, full stop, open bracket, 2015, close bracket, full stop, then quote. Insect pest and disease should be minimized to ensure good yield and marketable quality. Pests include foliar insects such as leaf miner, leaf roller, cutworm, aphids, flea, beetle, and mites. Follow IPM guidelines when administering a pest control program. Amaranth is tolerable to most disease. So amaranth here is speaking about your callaloo. So this organization or quoting is saying that amaranth is prone to diseases. Alright, so that explains why those outside would be affected by pests and diseases. Alright, so this is actually quoting here is supporting your discussion, your findings as well. Alright, so the reference for each quoting should be done on another page. Alright, so I'm going to show you basically for each quoting that we have in discussion, there should be a reference. So I'll go to that shortly. So let's go to another quoting here in the third paragraph. So this quoting here is showing you that for this article, you have 3 authors. So when you're doing your quoting for 3 authors, you would simply separate the names with a comma. Alright, same as the single, but in this case, you separate them with a comma and then the last, between the second to last name and last name, you have and. So let's read it. According to Clark D. H., Fletcher S., and Fender A. 1999, the leaves of callaloo plants are plagued by numerous pest species which adversely affect yield and marketability of the crop and have required expensive chemical control. The crops outdoor were prone to similar insects. So this quoting is also supporting the statement you have above. It is supported your findings. Let's continue. With relevance to the investigation done, callaloo grown outside was not the best idea and the result was similar to the quotation above in that production indoor was better than outdoor. So we have another quotation here. According to Author G 2017, comma, open bracket, the protection from pests and predators by the greenhouse is another huge advantage, full stop, close quotation. Alright, the wicking system was proven to be a successful technique for growing callaloos. According to the article, Hydroponic Wick System for Beginners 2018, a hydroponic system is ideal for growing herbs and lettuce, which are often wonderful plants for beginners. Herbs and lettuce can be used as daily ingredient and can be grown any time of the year. So with this quotation, for the article there weren't any author or organization. Alright, so what you can do now, this is how you would write your quotation for an article like this. So you say according to the article, right? And then you write the article name. In this case, the article was Hydroponic Wick Systems for Beginners and the year of publish was 2018, right? Alright, so when you don't have any author or you can't find the name of the organization that published the article, then you would start with the title of the article. And last but not least, based on the observation, it is seen that there was great amount of protection from insect by the greenhouse. The callaloo grown in the greenhouse were huge and free from insects and insects damage. Alright, so that's your discussion there. However, importantly, all the literature and quotation that were used, you should have your references written for each one. If you don't use a particular quotation, you will not use any reference, but once you use a quotation, you should write the reference. Now let us go and see how you would write the reference for each. Alright, so for this one what says Rodriguez A 2018, please note that this is a quotation, this is not the reference. Alright, so let's go down to the reference page. Alright, so here we have the reference page for all the quotations that were used in the discussion. So this is how you would write it. So of course you start with the author name here. So this is a single author. So you have author, comma, G, full stop, open bracket, 2017, the year of publish, close bracket, full stop. So after that, what you'd have next here is the title of the article. So comma, full stop, then the title of the article. Please note that the title of the article should be italic, and then full stop, and then what you should have is retrieve from. Alright, so it go to the URL of the article, copy it and paste it here, and then you put a comma and the date. You take off this information or URL, you put the date here, October 15, 2019, full stop. So that's the reference for your first quotation. And of course, when you're writing your reference heading, you should not put it in cap lock. It should be like this, just like this. And you should not underline it as well. That's standard. Alright, so the second one that we have here is the one with the Delaware State University. So you should have it. You start with the organization name, right? So Delaware State University, full stop, open bracket, 2015, that's the year of the publication, full stop. Then you have the title of the article, Callaloo Cooperative Extension, and then full stop. The title there should be italic as we stated above. Retrieve from the URL and the date you retrieve it. Alright, when you have no author or no organization, so let's move to the third one here. You notice you said no author, full stop, 2018, close bracket, full stop. Alright, so the year of publish. Then you have the name of the article, right? The title of the article, Hydroponic Wick System for Beginners, full stop, italic. And then you have retrieve from the URL and of course the date you retrieve the information from the internet. Alright, next one, which was the quotation with 3 authors. So you go again with the name of the authors, full stop, year of publish, then the title of the article, which should be in italic, then retrieve from the URL and the date you retrieve it. You will do the same thing for the last one, which is Rodriguez A, 2018, the title of the article, the date you retrieve, the URL, and the date. So now that you're at the end of your discussion, let's check back with the mark scheme to see where we had and also the marks that are given to those other components. According to the mark scheme, moving from the discussion, we go to the conclusion, the limitation, and the recommendation. Alright, so here we see that the conclusion values 1 mark, limitation 1 mark, recommendation for improvement 1 mark. In addition to that, the presentation, which is less than 5 spelling and grammatical error contained in the report, that's 1 mark as well. And the references, it values 1 mark as well. And the references said at least 2 references properly cited. So we already went through the references already, and you have seen how to write that. So let's go back to the investigation and go through what we have. The conclusion, limitation, and recommendation. Okay, so the conclusion here, what you have to know is that when you're writing your conclusion, you should go back to your aim. And as we know that the aim is comparing callaloo production grown in greenhouse versus those grown outdoor. Also, you should also reflect back on your results and also your discussions. So using information from all those 3 areas, then you should draw up your conclusion. So let's read what we have here. It can be concluded that growing callaloos inside the greenhouse was more productive than growing them outdoor. The callaloos grown in the greenhouse have the protection from rain and pests and diseases that would normally affect callaloo production. Alright, so you try to get your conclusion as short as possible, and you would come to your conclusion based on what you have in your aim, your results, and discussion. The limitation. So the limitation is basically anything that affected your results. So challenges that you have while you are carrying out your SBAs, and if those challenges would affect your results in any way, then you would list them. Let's read what we have in the limitation here. The callaloo harvested in the first batch from the greenhouse was not much, because the reservoirs in the self-wicking buckets ran out of water without being refilled for a couple of days. Alright, so that would basically affected the amount of callaloo that would be harvested from the greenhouse in the first harvesting. Alright, so that was directly a problem there that could affect the result. Alright, let's go to the recommendation. You would write your recommendation based on what you have in your limitation. So you're basically going to look at how you could solve that problem or what you could do next time to prevent the problem. Let's read what we have in our recommendation here. Ensure a watering schedule is set up for the timely refilling of the reservoirs so that the plants can have constant supply of water. Okay, so as you know, each of these values 1 mark, right? So in total, you will have 3 marks there. Okay, so these 3 items will take us to the end of the investigation. However, let's go over to the mark sheet. I want to explain something very important. What I'm saying here now is that the total mark for the investigation would add up to 20. However, in the teacher's mark book or on the assessor sheet, it would be recorded out of 10. So when the teacher collected your SBAs, the investigation, the 20 would be eventually divided by 2. I will not be able to do the cost analysis in this video because it's a very long video. So what I will do, I'll do it in a part 2 of this video. So look out for the cost analysis shortly. If you have not yet subscribed, subscribe to the channel so you get automatic updates of when I release the cost analysis and other videos. Thank you for listening.